it's getting into a place of inquiry and questioning, but doing it from a compassionate place, not from a place of, oh, that's ridiculous, that couldn't possibly happen, they must have ... You know, you can have your assumptions and your judgments, but in this environment, what we're trying to do with those assumptions and judgments is use them to create inquisitive questions that bring up a different light and a different sense of possibility.
What is the compelling issue that brings people together onto these into these?
So some good questions. So number one, it's not problems based; it's solutions based. Doesn't mean you have to have problem and solution, and they're like dual natures of each other.
Okay.
But there's an emphasis on solution, not on problem.
Right. Okay.
So we start with solution, and we may end up with some problems out of that, but not how we do today, which is we start with a problem and hope we end up with a solution. So that's the progression forward. Another one is, as you mentioned, the issue of principles. One of the outcomes of this process over time, I anticipate and propose that we as a community, as a collective, devise the principles for design in each one of these domains. So one of the requirements, so we say, for each one of the domain groupings or communities, subgroupings, is to be always looking at and developing a set of principles that guide and monitor that subject place, like science, for example. Another one might be learning system. One's learning and education. We're now realizing that the way we learn through the education system no longer is useful or helpful. And the trends in the way we learn are changing. So the principles for the way we did learn are dying off, part of the old myth, and new ones are emerging, part of the new myth. And those principles will be devised by each one of the sub-communities. So ultimately we'll have this portfolio of guiding principles that will be a part of the Changing Normal book.
Tell me more about how do we ensure that people behave properly? How do we ensure that that the work that is collectively generated will be then distributed to people? Who's going to own this information? How is the product of this work going to be distributed, and how will the participants benefit from it?
The product will be collective, and I anticipate out of it various monetary products and services will emerge that individuals will be able to capture and take advantage of, and hopefully collectively share and you know, group themselves into, you know, entrepreneurial opportunities. That's number one. Another important point is the protocol. There is an emerging protocol online for people in the way they interact. It's not specific yet. There's a lot of good ones, there's a lot of bad ones. But there is, you're right, there has to be another collective process that defines how we connect and how we communicate. Some of it's been started, but it still needs to be devised. This whole thing is a design process. So it's not like somebody already comes down from the far left and says that, you know, this is the way it's going to be and you have to follow these rules. This makes it much more challenging, I admit. You know, we are not, as a society, geared for collective leadership. But one of the things that this is talking about or moving toward is a collective leadership process, and helping to devise protocols as well as design principles for engagement protocols as well as principles for creating are necessary. So we will be doing that together. Another point to make is that once we go through a dialogue process and we get a large enough momentum or a large enough number of members on the site actively engaged, we're going to be moving into workshop series and sessions where online people can go and learn about different aspects of the various domains or the general conditions of, or ideas of changing normal. Those are in process as we speak. There is also planned a radio show where regular speakers can talk. And the difference between the two is one, there will be interactivity, the other will be just more informational. We're emphasizing interactivity. So it's less about providing information and more about engaging and interacting. So the workshops online will be available for people to come, and we've got some new technologies that we're looking at for allowing people to come into online rooms and collaborate. Which brings up the other piece, is that there will be ways for these groups, the subgroupings of subgroupings, as the domains get larger and members, etc., that people can cluster themselves based on secondary or sub-interests and go into online workspaces or collaboration spaces to devise, to design, to discuss, to dialogue. And the technologies are now at a point where we can do that, and they're rapidly improving. So over the next few years, we're going to be taking advantage of some very interesting technologies to improve our communication.
You know, what value would they get from participating in Changing Normal? If not now, then in the foreseeable future, how would you envision that?
Yet to be determined in terms of organizational and bringing in groups. The focus on this now is a little bit more grassroots oriented and the individual, and that the groupings are going to be new groupings as people begin to cluster. If we bring in existing organizations, there'll probably be a fractal nature to the process. Important principle that is present with Changing Normal is the idea of fractals.
And how does fractal apply in this?
Well, the general idea of fractal is that for any one thing, everything is in it. So if you imagine the 21 domains, any one domain that you may be involved with need to recognize the other 20 are also in there. And we have a system called concentrics management that allows this not to be an overwhelming thing for any one individual, but to be a very informationally dense process of bringing in content to any one domain by having each individual be responsible not only for the domain that they've signed up for, but one other domain. And they have to go and seed and listen in and connect to that other domain and pollinate or bring back information into their existing, more active domain. So that's the general principle, and it's really going to be an important piece that people take on this secondary activity. But I also think it's not an overwhelming secondary activity. And what I'm really excited about is thinking about how a subject or an object or a design of something manifests, now having multiple lenses in from all the other domains that need to be positioned and suggested and questioned and inquired about before the design is complete.
Okay, so in summary then, Vic, what final message do you want to provide to individuals who are considering to sign up, or you'd like to inspire them to sign up with Changing Normal and check it out?
I think that if you're a inquisitive person, if you're compassionate about what the world is, the state in which the world is in, not so much angry anymore, but have moved to a place of what can we do, and I want to get engaged and make it happen, and I want to make a difference. If you're that kind of person, if you feel your creative essence has not been really fully accessed or utilized, and you want a place to try it on, this is a place to do that. So Changing Normal is really going to be a dynamic site. By the way, one of the things that we have planned, talk about a huge vision, my personal goal is to have 333 million members by the year ending 2012. Actively engaged around the planet in their communities, applying Changing Normal aspects and principles that were created out of it, bringing them to their city councils, and bringing them to their design houses and their organizations, and actually creating and making a difference. Changing Normal.